So I've been meaning to make this video for a year now, but I've always put it off because reasons. But considering that Esquire decided to publish this, I feel like it's time for a bit of course correction. Readers, if you've been following me since the beginning of my existence here on YouTube, then you would know that usually during the end of Black History Month, I would publish this big dramatized, that's not a word. I'll produce a dramatic monologue at the end of the month in regards to whatever topic that I wanted to touch on related to Black history or like Black lives or things like that. Last year I didn't do one of those because I wanted to do something different, something personal. And I didn't do that because of two reasons. One being nerves and the other being depression. I was still unemployed during that time. So now that both of those hurdles are slightly better to jump over, I figured it's finally time for me to talk about how I found my own sense of blackness. AKA finding my own sense of self while simultaneously figuring out what it means to be a black man in America. So with that being said, for all of my Patreon readers, I just need to warn you ahead of time, there won't be a script attached to this video because everything's off the top of my head. I feel like I can't genuinely come off as authentic if I'm reading off of a script as opposed to just having everything just be as natural as possible. I hope you all understand, and I'll definitely make it up to you later. Also, join my Patreon. There are different tiers. Help a brother out. So growing up was fine at first. I say at first because, in my opinion, my initial exposure to different cultures and things like that was at a place where I could naturally come up the way that I currently am now without having to deal with all the struggles. But things happened and I had to go through those said struggles and I had to learn the hard way. Not by my choice, it was mostly by my parents because they had me switch schools. I say that because my favorite school, elementary school at that, was my second one. My mom tried to put me in some type of charter or Catholic school before then, and I just hated it. But yeah, my second elementary school, I spent kindergarten up until the first quarter of the first half of third grade, in which case I met my best friend at the time, who was white. I was crushing hard on a girl that I met in first grade who was black. And when I say crushing hard, I mean Doug Funny is to Patty Mayonnaise type crush hard. It was I was head over heels over this girl. And for the most part, everything pretty much went swimmingly from my time there. Yes, like everybody else, I did stupid kid shit, and at the same time I got properly chastised for it and learned valuable lessons from the repercussions of my actions, but at the same time, I wasn't really bullied. Nobody really talked shit about my interests. The kids that weren't my best friend at the time and my crush were, if anything, either neutral or positive toward the fact that I existed. And third grade was shaping up to be perfect. Both my best friend and my crush were not only in my same class, but we were all in the same table. We were the three amigos. We were perfect. Then my mom decided to put me in another neighborhood school. And that's when I started to experience struggles. That's when I started to experience a difference between upbringing and finding out that kids are actually assholes to other kids who aren't as often as assholes. And outside of going to this new school and finding out, holy crap, these kids curse. We're only 8 years old. We're not supposed to do this. Another difference I discovered between me and these new kids and the kids that I've come to respect and be friendly with were their tastes in music. You see, I have baby boomer parents and I was born in 1988. So all of the music that I grew up listening to was either Motown or smooth jazz or contemporary 90s contemporary R&B. And because I was still a kid, I didn't comprehend the idea of Motown being old music. I thought because it was still on the radio in some form or fashion that it was actually new. And because my parents were baby boomers, I was never exposed to hip hop or rap at a young age. So whenever I heard it, or whenever I heard my peers at my new school talk about it or play it, I was just like, what is that? What is that? And of course, I got picked on because of it. I also got picked on for other various reasons, but we'll get to that in another video. Also, I just want to emphasize that both these schools I went to were both Detroit public schools. They were both in the DPS system. So it wasn't like I just came from this high and mighty suburban school to this decaying urban Detroit school. No, they were still both Detroit public schools. As a matter of fact, they were just right down the street from each other. Outside of my taste in music, I was picked on because of the way I acted, the way I spoke. They said that I talked proper, and I'm like, what does that mean? I'm talking. This is what you're supposed to do. So yeah, I was definitely hit on that you talk proper and shit, you trying to sound white, from like 8-year-olds in elementary school. But it also helped that I still was able to find friends in that school that were like-minded enough so that we can like keep each other keep each other's backs and shit. Both I found immediately in 3rd grade who were black and Asian. And then considering the final years of my elementary school career there, moving on to middle school, it was all, at least for the majority of the part, about fitting in. And that's mostly due to the fact that my middle school was yet another Detroit public school, with the majority of its students being black. And the ones that interacted with me constantly were on the same tip as the elementary school I transferred to, so that if I decided to like speak out my interests or my musical tastes or act a certain way around them, then I would absolutely sure that they would just like decide to pick on me for some reason, which is why I gravitated toward other like-minded peoples where at that time I found my best friend currently. But no, I would only show my interests if it was like required for like a class project. I specifically attended an art class or a performing arts class in which that happened, and then both the students and the teacher hated me for reasons I do not want to get into. And up until like I left at 8th grade, it just got to the point where it's just like, I don't know if this is what I want. If this is how my people are, I can't relate to them at all. And at that point, I've seen like a lot of, not necessarily Dawson's Creek because I fucking hate Dawson's Creek, but I've seen a lot of like teen movies that had like a racially diverse cast and that everybody seemed to get along and everything. Like, you know, High School Musical, back when like the High School Musical genre of teen movies were actually good. So for the longest time, after seeing like my peers that weren't my friends act, react, struggle with things that they're not comfortable with and everything like that, I was just like, I feel like I'd be better at a white school. Which was the very first thought that sent me down a spiral of self-hate. And when I say self-hate, I mean that I made a lot of decisions that, looking back at it, would make me feel like I was specifically trying to like isolate myself from my race, while at the same time trying to find acceptance in the race that my race told me that I'll be better off being with because I was so different from the race that I belonged to. Like, I still remember it, like I wanted to go to this suburban ass school that only had one level that looked like it was filmed for a teen drama on like the WB and shit, hoping to have that experience from all the movies that I've seen and feel like that I would feel I would feel comfortable, a lot more safer in that type of environment. But instead, for high school, I went to another Detroit public school, specifically Cass Technical High School, which is actually one of the more prestige ones. And whereas in high school I wasn't really picked on as much as I was in elementary and middle school because of my interests and tastes and the way I held myself, or the way my presence sparked in others, there was still that urge in me to want to experience like something better, which I eventually got in college. Not off the bat, but I got it. Because I spent a year at Wayne State University, the main college here in Detroit. And as much as I was looking forward to it and exposing myself to different types of people outside of those within my own race, I also was exposed to white foolishness for the first time. And it was just like, oh, this is new. While I was definitely able to find camaraderie with a few people because of at the time, my taste of music has changed. It's like, along with Motown, 90s contemporary R&B, jazz, I also became a fan, thanks to my current best friend, of rock, alternative rock, which only helped isolate me more from like the black community that I was exposed to in elementary and middle school. Basically, I was the alternative black kid who, with the only thing missing in my repertoire was like being a fan of like the WWE or some shit. Yes, I'm fully aware of the irony. An individual who voluntarily sleeps with other men is not a fan of wrestling. And it wasn't even just white foolishness, it was also hearing the opinions of my white peers that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Like, my second term of my freshman year of college was the same year that Prince performed at the Super Bowl back in 2007. And there are only 2 Super Bowls that I actually looked forward to watching. The first one was when the Super Bowl was in Detroit, and the second one was when Prince performed the halftime show. And at the time of that performance, I had yet to be introduced to Foo Fighters, so when Prince did his cover of Best of You, I was hearing it for like the very first time. So when Monday came, and I was like eating lunch with my friends, one of my white friends was talking about how he thought that Prince's cover of Best of You was sloppy as shit and how he didn't like it. And then he turned to me, gave me a nod, and was like, "Right, Laron?" And I was like, I just gave like that slight nod while inside I was like, I didn't think it was terrible. And then other friends that I had who I've been hanging around with since the beginning of my school year there casually used the N-word around me because they realized that I wasn't one of those black people that would be mad at them for saying it. And it got to the point where when I was talking to one of their mutual friends through like Skype or some shit, even he asked me, Are you okay? Are you okay with them using that? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. When in actuality, it wasn't. And I only allowed it because I guess confidence reasons. And it took me a good while to get out of that headspace and to be able to tell myself and others that no, it's not okay. Don't do that. And not just for white people doing white foolishness things. I'm talking about like people within my own community as well. It took me a good while, but I was able to like unlearn a lot of the toxic stuff that I taught myself or that I just decided to like expose myself to just because of the fact that I was trying to find a place where I belong. Now, I'm just content with being me. And there are a lot of other black people that felt the same way that I felt or were brought up the same way that I was brought up, and at the same time still aren't willing to like throw their own race to the side just because they, at least as far as what they were exposed to, didn't accept them. While at the same time still liking the things that they like, still loving the things that they love, even though our people classify it as that white people shit. Especially now that the majority of it is so mainstream that they're actually on that white people shit too. They just call it something else. I related to that one episode of the Boondocks where R. Kelly's on trial for the first time, and Huey Freeman's mostly talking about like the black people who will constantly support R. Kelly no matter how much evidence, how much of everything else there is about him doing the things that he's done and everything like that. He says something at the end of the episode when Grandpa Freeman goes to get Uncle Ruckus after playing a game of chess when he fell asleep. But they're still our people. And that resonates deeply within me now, specifically now, because I realize that it doesn't matter how different they are from me, how much they like to talk shit about me because of how I present myself, because of what I listen to, because of what I like. They're still our people. And at the same time, I had to accept the fact that it doesn't matter how much I try to push myself away from them and go back and go into this crowd where I feel more comfortable, more safe, because to a certain extent, I'm still going to be the token black guy. I'm still going to be the guy that a lot of people don't feel as threatened when they say the N-word around. I'm still going to be the one at the end of the day when we're all pulled over, the one in handcuffs, because I'm the only black person there. It took me a while, but at the end of the day, I came up with a new system for myself that's less toxic and most specifically, more inclusive. So for any of my African American readers out there who kind of shared the same experience that I did, I just want to let you know that you're not alone. If you've ever been picked on for talking proper in elementary and middle school, I've been there. If you've ever been picked on because your tastes involve that white people shit, I've been there. If your cousin ever asked you for your black card just because they found out that you don't eat watermelon, I've been there, and that came from a real place that actually happened to me. And if you've ever been thinking about what it's like on the other side, as someone who's been there, it's both interesting and disheartening. On one hand, yes, go ahead, make friends with white people and other races. It's actually very good for your mental awareness as far as like the different races and cultures here in America and the differences between us and how we're all actually similar at the same time. But be very cautious because you are still not them. No matter how much you can relate to them, you cannot get away with the same shit that they can get away with. And I had to learn that the hard way. And also, don't sacrifice your own personal integrity just to fit in with them. There has to be a line drawn regarding what you're willing to put up with and what's crossing said line. Then you being verbal to them about it lets them know what's acceptable and what's not. If they're willing to learn and put in the work, then go ahead, stay with them. But if not, and they just don't care about you and like your personal gripes and everything like that regarding like how they present you or what they say around you, then it's time to cut them off. But in order for you to get to that point, you have to learn to love yourself. Love yourself for all the things that everybody else makes fun of you for. And this just doesn't apply to black people. It applies to Asian people. It applies to Hispanic people. You're not going to be able to successfully find acceptance by pushing away your own people or finding refuge in another people. You find acceptance by accepting who you are and being absolutely unapologetical for it. That's what I had to learn the hard way. So with that being said, readers, your homework assignment for the day. Write in the comment section below if you had any experiences growing up similar to the experience that I dealt with growing up, as far as like accepting yourself for who you are, or just, you know, all the other shit. Like I stated earlier in this video, if you want to help support the channel, you can join my Patreon by clicking the card at the end of the video or in the link in the description box below, where you can also find a link to my merchandise store. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and every other Friday. But this is Readus 101. Happy Black History Month. Class dismissed.